In that building at the top of the hour, congressional Republicans are expected to grill 3 Democratic governors over their state's immigration policies. Governors Tim Walz of Minnesota, J.B. Pritzker of Illinois, and Kathy Hochul of New York have been called to testify before the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. Earlier this year, President Trump issued executive orders targeting so-called sanctuary cities. And Republican Congressman James Comer of Kentucky, who is the chair of the oversight panel, has promised to explore the effects of states' sanctuary laws. Joining us now, Republican Congressman Pete Sessions of Texas. He is a member of the House Oversight Committee and will be taking part in that hearing. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Good morning.
Let's start with this, the hearing coming a little later. When President Trump took office and he said that you wanted to close the borders, ramp up deportations, he said it would focus on those who are here with criminal records, ideally particularly violent criminal records. We have seen, though, in recent weeks that effort has expanded to those whose only crime is being here, not without documentation. So a lot of them live in sanctuary cities where that is prohibited. So talk to us about how you feel about the shift in these tactics.
Well, the shift in policy, as it appears to be, would be because local ICE agents who did their job where they were. However, this nationwide task force is directly aimed at exactly what the president spoke about, and that is criminals who are in our midst, states that have allowed sanctuary policies to attract these criminals and others, and then the correspondingly public policy that comes with it, not only spending, but crime, drugs, and criminal activity, including theft, burglary, and then sexual assault. So the president has now gathered together, and it took them a good bit of time to gather together the correct training, the correct teams who would move across the country, and the ramifications of how they would deal with local law enforcement. And so they were really thrust into this as a result of a large number of people who have come to this country illegally, committing heinous crimes that are in our midst every day. That is what has focused the president now of coming into these communities. And what's happened is these governors, these cities are fighting for their criminals to stay where they are, and we disagree with that. So we're going to have a conversation today. We'll be probably all day with these governors.
Now, to be clear, some of those who have been detained do not have violent criminal records. I want to ask you one quick follow-up to this. The governor of your state, Governor Abbott, deployed National Guard. You're there in part because of protests in San Antonio and other cities. But in California, Governor Newsom did not want the National Guard deployed. President Trump did so anyway. Are you comfortable with that response?
What I'm comfortable with is that the National Guard were mobilized. They did not, in my opinion, become engaged in the activity. They were there for civil reasons to make sure that the buildings, the people who they were around were not criminalized, and perhaps for the civility of the city of Los Angeles. I think they were properly utilized, and I'm proud of that.
Congressman, let's turn now to the piece of legislation, the One Big Beautiful Bill, as has been dubbed by the president. I know you voiced some misgivings about the impact on the debt and deficit, but you did vote for it. Walk us through your thinking that got you to yes.
Well, the thinking that got me to yes is at the last moment there were 2 significant issues that were negotiated. A couple hundred years ago, I lived in New Jersey. I was at the old Bell Labs organization. I think New Jersey is a great state, but they're also one of these high state tax states. And the people who represent these cities and states were seeking the advantage to increase the amount of money that a person could deduct on their individual income tax that would be increased above $10,000. As that became negotiated over the 5 or 6 weeks, they landed on an answer that would get their vote. And I will just tell you that I think that from my perspective, while I was opposed to it, while I did not like it, I believe that these votes that were necessary allowed us to pass the bill, to get it to the Senate, to then to negotiate what might be seen as a different bill in some respects. I think that the people who negotiated did so in fairness to the people who, if their people do not receive this, they move out of their states. They move somewhere else. And I don't think that's in the best interest of people who live in these high state areas, nor people who would be receiving these people. So we're trying to work together as a team. I would hope that I have always been known as a person who's able to reach within at least my own party and give compromise to people who may offer a different view than I do. The final vote is the one that I think that my party and I and the president will be held accountable for.
Congressman Sessions, it's Walter Isaacson. And I have a question because you've just talked about compromise on things. There are certain extensions of the tax cut that even Donald Trump thought were unnecessary and certainly may not be contributing to the growth of the economy. If you try and reconcile in the bill with the Senate to get a balance where you actually bring down the deficit, would some of those extensions of tax cuts be something you would consider to offset some of the other costs in the bill?
Walter, thank you very much. You're savvy enough to remember that when President Obama back in 2009 took over, they had 58 Democrats and got 3 more votes, and they raised what would be $6 trillion deficit, just like we're talking about some 2.5 or 3 right now. President Obama found a way to increase taxes and increase spending significantly to get to $6 trillion. We're trying to do the reverse. We're trying to keep our economy moving. We're trying to make sure all sectors of the economy, including all parts of the country, including small business, have these opportunities to not just compete around the world, but to compete in their communities. And I think it's important that we remember that we are working off numbers back to the last time we had 60 votes in the Senate. And that's what we're trying to match up to. Ours is to reduce spending but increase marketplace. People that want to show up at jobs and people that have jobs. And that is what this is about. Walter, I will be very pleased to engage people on the issue that you spoke of because it is important that Republicans still get closer to that equal mark as opposed to the $6 trillion that Democrats and President Obama laid before the country and passed.
All right. Republican Congressman Pete Sessions of Texas. Congressman, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you.